Okay, Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte for the WBC heavyweight title at Wembley Stadium. A fight that felt like an eternity to get done. We had all the little drama of the going to purse bids and Dillian Whyte not happy with his pay and all sorts of madness going on. But we're here now this weekend. It is the second defense of Tyson Fury's WBC heavyweight title. It's the first time for Dillian Whyte where he gets a world title shot, a shot that he has more than earned. What was it, 1,000 day or something stupid like that? For he was mandatory for the WBC back when Deontay Wilder was champion, and I'm happy now that he's finally getting his opportunity. He had some setbacks against Povetkin, but he earned it. Beat the likes of Joseph Parker, beat Chisora twice, beat Oscar Rivas, beat Povetkin. You know, he's somebody who I feel like this is well overdue, the shot, and I think it's good for him. I think it's a good fight. The whole these cards are never really that great, and the undercard isn't that fantastic. Got Tommy Fury competing on it, but again, nothing too much to brag about. But they rarely do deliver these sort of high profile fights with the undercard, so I don't complain too much, to be honest. It's just the norm in boxing nowadays. But yeah, a very an interesting fight. It seems like the consensus in this fight that everybody seems to believe that it will go a similar way to how the Derek Chisora fight went with Fury, where, you know, in both fights it was pretty comfortable for Fury. Didn't really have any trouble in those fights, and because Fury's so long and so big, it's almost as if any heavyweight who's a little bit small, they ain't really going to have much of a chance against him. Or it's the perception anyway. I think he obviously struggled against Cunningham back in the day, who came up from cruiserweight, but he was very slick and really good on his feet. I think he'd have some problems against Usyk, but because Fury's so big, he's just a problem for everybody because it's trying to reach him. But he's beatable, Tyson Fury. I said this a lot of time, and will Dillian Whyte be the guy to do it? I don't know, but I'm going to look at this, though, because I think it's an interesting fight. So, first of all, if we go through Tyson Fury's record in these last few fights, obviously he had the 2 fights with Deontay Wilder, for that, for Otto Wallin, and then for that, Tom Schwartz, and then obviously the Wilder fight before that. But if you look at the Schwartz fight, looked fantastic. A simple fight. Fury's record is weird. Fury either fights the very, very best, or he fights just people who aren't that fantastic. So his record's a bit weird like that. But did good against Schwartz. Knocked him out in the second round. It was pretty easy for him. I think it was the second round anyway. And then he fought Otto Wallin when he had the cut over his eye, and that was a serious cut. Now that could be something to watch out for, not just in this fight, but future fights for Fury if he continues, because that was bad, and it looked like he got bit by a shark. And I don't think those, again, it's easy to get over. Those sort of cuts leaves a lot of scar tissue, and I think if you're someone who's a bit smaller, who has to sort of try to overcome that reach, I think for Dillian Whyte in this fight in particular, Dillian Whyte is very much more of a brawler than an actual slick boxer. So I think trying to go at that cut could be an interesting tactic for him. But yeah, but he beat Otto Wallin, though, rightfully so. But it was a real scrap. And after that, fought Deontay Wilder, put in a brilliant performance in the second fight, and got Mark Brilliant to throw in the towel. And then in the third fight, which was his last fight, a great fight. I didn't think Fury looked that fantastic in the fight, but I think he was just more aggressive and just better than Wilder on the night, and that's sort of what did it for him. But he did get dropped, and if I look at how Fury looks physically, Fury's never looked physically that brilliant. He's not an Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder type guy. But I was watching him on the open workout, and he still looks like, I thought he was in pretty poor shape, I'll be honest, for the Wilder free fight. I know, again, like I said, he's never looked great anyway, but I don't know, I just think he looked particularly bad. And I think the reason for that was he had the issues with his baby, and he maybe wasn't in his best physical condition. I thought he looked great in the second fight with Wilder. So, and even the Klitschko fight, Fury can look in good shape. It's just there's certain times where he looks worse than usual. But and it's something that I think to note in some of the sort of the open workout that he did. He kind of looked similar shape, so it makes me think maybe this is sort of his new way of doing it. Maybe he's got a new regime, or perhaps he's kind of slacking off a bit. I don't know. Might be nothing, but it's just an interesting to watch out for. But yeah, but his last few fights against Wilder look good. And this is a good fight because it's the first fight since he's been to Crank where he's not fighting Deontay Wilder, who is a very specific type of. All you got to do is watch out for that right hand. Dillian Whyte has different variables and different factors to watch out for. So this one should be interesting for that reason alone. And it's finally what feels like to me a real defense for Fury. Wilder, don't get me wrong, is a very dangerous foe, but Wilder was the champion, and Fury's first defense of that battle was just a rematch. This feels like a real defense where you got a real worthy challenger, and for that reason alone, I'm interested to see how Fury handles it. This is the second fight where he's coming into the fight as a champion. He's fighting a contender. He's not fighting a guy who already beat. So I'm curious mentally how he approaches this fight. And then if you look at Dillian Whyte, and if you look at what he has been doing these last few, obviously he had the sort of issues with the drug testing stuff, which thankfully got solved, because I don't think it would have been good for boxing if it happened. And looking at his last few two Povetkin fights, which obviously one got knocked out in the other. Before that, it was Marius Wok, and I think that was the one after he came back after drug tests, which wasn't great, but again, he was a bit rusty, so I don't go on too much. And then he fought Oscar Rivas, obviously, before that. Against Povetkin, so this the first Povetkin fight, I think people have a bit weird memories when it comes to that fight. Yes, Dillian Whyte got absolutely flatlined, but look at it, he was dominating that fight and dropped Povetkin a few times. So I don't know why there is this narrative that Dillian Whyte was going to have no chance of a rematch and same thing was going to happen. He just made one mistake, and he just seems susceptible to the uppercut, so maybe that's something to watch out for in the fight. AJ knocked him out with it, and Povetkin did the same thing. But yeah, to me, I think Dillian Whyte got a bit of a hard time after that first fight. And then in the second fight, it didn't really surprise me, knocked him out, and didn't really struggle at all. And now he's obviously got the Tyson Fury fight, so he's had a decent amount of activity, but nothing too much. Neither of these two have been active recently, and I think for Tyson Fury especially, that it's an issue because you don't want to be a champion who's not fighting, because then people lose interest. It's one reason why I think Canelo is at the top of the hill when it comes to boxing, because that guy fights so much. And yeah, I think for Tyson Fury, he says he's going to retire after this fight. I don't think he will, but I think he needs to stay active after this. And same for Dillian Whyte. These guys are in the prime years of their career. Look at it. Tyson Fury is 33 and so is Dillian Whyte. They're all both the same age. At 33, to me, I always say in boxing 35 is when you kind of go out of your prime. So I know there's some guys who are exception to this rule, but most of the time that's what happens. And that's why I feel like both of these guys need to do it. But if you look at the detail of the tape, they both had... Dillian Whyte has had 30 fights, Tyson Fury has had 31, or 32 even. He's had 31 wins, Tyson Fury obviously had the one draw against Wilder. And Dillian Whyte has had the 28 wins with the 2 losses to AJ and to Povetkin. 22 knockouts for Fury and 19 for Dillian Whyte. And the reach advantage is an interesting one. 85-inch reach advantage for Fury and a 78 for Dillian Whyte. And Fury's 6'9", which I believe, and Dillian Whyte 6'4", which... If you saw him in real life, he'd probably be massive, Dillian Whyte, but he always looks a bit small to me, I don't know. But he looks huge, though. Like, he's got big arms and big chest and shoulders, so he's somebody who he can definitely bully you in there. And yeah, it'd be interesting. This fight's interesting to me because with Dillian Whyte, mentally is where I'm looking at in this fight. He hasn't done any media for this fight. Dillian Whyte hasn't done any real press, no promotion. Don't blame him, I guess, for whatever issue he feels he needs, but I'm interested to see how he approaches this fight. Will he freeze under the big lights, or will he go for it? Like he always comes. Say what I want about Dillian Whyte, he's never in boring fights. He always comes to entertain, and to me, yeah, I'm interested from his point of view. And so if I go into the sort of ways that both of these guys can win. So first, I'll start off with the challenge of Dillian Whyte in this case. The first thing you need to do, I mean, not the first thing you need to do, but first thing I want to point out is I think Dillian Whyte cannot let the moment get to him, and I think just staying patient in there is very, very vital. To me, the way that I look at Dillian Whyte, he kind of, in the last few fights, he stayed a bit more patient, but he has a tendency to almost just shoot and throw that right hand way out of range and to throw a lot of his shots out of range. So don't overreach, especially against Tyson Fury, who has got a stupidly long reach advantage. Don't do that, because against certain guys you can kind of get away with it, but there are certain fights will make you pay for that. And so I think staying patient, just, biding your time, jabbing to the body and going, shooting the right hand. I think just mixing it up and being patient in there is very, very key, because to me, when I see fighters who come up against world champions, you see the likes of what happened with Teofimo Lopez for Lomachenko. He wasn't eager. He took his time. He was patient. He knew what he was doing. And Dillian Whyte, I think, really has to stick to his game plan here, because the moment he goes out the window, I think that's where Dillian Whyte gets sloppy. And Dillian Whyte, to me, has lost fights where he's almost been just too sloppy. He lost the AJ fight by just fighting emotional, in my opinion, not really fighting with his head on. The Povetkin fight made a little mistake, but again, those little things like staying switched on in those moments are what is going to almost it's almost what decides these moments in boxing. So yeah, I think for Dillian Whyte, staying patient is key, and I think don't make any stupid mistakes in there. And that, I think, being mentally switched on for 12 rounds is something that not a lot of fighters have. And I think Tyson Fury himself doesn't have this. There are times where he will get sloppy and get hit with shots. There aren't many fighters who can do that. So I think for Dillian Whyte, if he can mentally just keep himself in a very stoic place, I think it's important. And the other thing to do, and this is something that Otto Vollen did, and I think you need to do it, is you need to make this a dirty fight. And when I mean dirty, I mean you got to get in there, clinch, punch. I don't even want to ever encourage rabid punching or shots to the back head, but just make it rough, make it horrible. Tyson Fury has that cut over his eye. When was that fight? I forget when the Otto Vollen and Tyson Fury fight was. I want to say 2019, but I could be wrong about this. It was 2019, not that long ago. So I think, and that cut again, it's a bad cut. Those things take time to heal. I mean, some they don't ever heal. There are times where sort of cuts, you see a lot of times in fights where cuts will be opened up from long into camp and in fights, and it happens a lot. Sometimes fighters, they have a scar tissue which just doesn't never go away. And if you're Dillian Whyte, I think prodding at that cut or that specific spot would be beneficial, because I don't know if you're really going to get the benefit of doubt in London. I know he's from London, but it's Taz for a show. It's on BT Sport. Frank Warren's on it. It's all I know he says it's not Taz for a show, but it basically is, because ultimately you look at it, there isn't really many people, I think, tuning into the fight who are almost tuning in specifically for Dillian Whyte. So obviously they're both fighting. It takes two to make a great fight, but it is a Taz for a show. He's the one who decided, that there should be no English judges, and they did it. He's probably the one who decides all these little things, and that, in a sense, makes it his show. So the officials aren't going to do any favour, neither are the judges. So to me, I don't think you can rely on you're not going to have box fair, but you can't rely on that. You need to be smart. You need to sort of keep it. You can just to mix it up, and I think once you do that, I think you can almost open up that cut and make it more dirty for Fury. That is when I think Tyson Fury will get a bit more desperate, and that's when I think you can, everybody seems to think that the money shot for Dillian Whyte is his left hook, and his left hook is brilliant. He rocked AJ with it and not touches, or it's not top many people. He has an amazing left hook, but setting up that left hook is important, and I think, again, if you can kind of almost get Tyson Fury thinking about maybe, you hit him a couple of times with the right hand. Dylan White's straight overhand right isn't that great, but it's powerful. I think that's something that if you can just keep throwing it, and almost get Tyson Fury thinking about that, that would be something that I think maybe then could open up the left hook. We'll see, but yeah, I think. But like I said, make it a dirty fight. This, I think, for Tyson Fury, he doesn't love that. You saw against Otto, he won the fight, but he struggled. He didn't look fantastic in there, and I think doing the same thing would be beneficial for Dylan Whyte. And the third thing, and this is something I have said about Tyson Fury for so long. Right, Tyson Fury's never lost. So I'm not going to say this is the blueprint to beat him. But with a guy that big, go to the body. It's something like Dylan White's nickname is the Body Snatcher. It's time to start living up to the nickname. I'm not saying, look, Dylan Whyte isn't particularly known for going to the body, but I get, look, he's not like one of the best body punchers in the world of boxing. He's not a Canelo or an Errol Spence or somebody like that, but the body's there for Tyson Fury. If you can slow him down with the body shots and almost reduce the movement, you got more of a chance of knocking him out and stopping him and doing the thing I said, opening up that cut and maybe knocking him out. Because to me, Tyson Fury, somebody noted this actually about as well about Tyson Fury. It's something I noticed, but I never really picked up on. He wears his shorts very, very high, like obsessively high, and it's something that nobody really picks up on. But obviously, as we know, they always say punch towards the belt line. If your shorts are higher up, the belt line obviously is a bit higher. So it's something that I don't know, it's something that nobody ever picks up on, but I do think it's an interesting thing there from Fury. And quite often people feel like people who are fat, they can kind of take body shots more, but honestly, it's not really the case a lot of the time. If you look at a lot of guys who are fat, if you rip their body a couple of times and get them slowing down, they really, I mean, like for record, Tyson Fury is fat to an extent. He's still in fantastic shape for this fight, I'm sure. But if you can just, pop a few body shots, slow him down, hit him with some jabs to the body. In fact, to his credit, Deontay Wilder had the right idea in the third fight because he kept jabbing to the body and he actually reddened the stomach of Fury a little bit, but he just kind of at a point went back to type and just started swinging again. But yeah, if you can just get inside, slow him down with the body shots. Tyson Fury himself, I'm pretty sure, even said, I think it might have been the Klitschko build up, that the best way to beat him, he's a big tree, is to chop at the roots. And I think going to the body is the way to beat him. It's the one way. It's one thing I say about this heavyweight division. There's no real body punchers, and it's the one thing that I've always wanted. I think because of how athletic he is, I think the guy who's best suited to be a body puncher is Anthony Joshua, but he, for some reason, doesn't really adopt it that much. But I think if you can get somebody in there who can really dig the body, almost like a heavyweight Errol Spence, I think it would be a problem for Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury's, again, he's tall, but the if you can just slow him down, he is a fantastic chin, and they always say people who are fantastic chin are weak to the body, and vice versa. So yeah, I'd be interested to. I think it could be an interesting thing for Dylan White, because he has gone to the body a few times, but he's just not really that excessive with it. But to me, I think going to the body is crucial for Dylan White if he's going to try and stop and knock out Tyson Fury and have success in this fight. Don't just go head hunting, because then Fury will just pick you off all day. And yeah, I think for Dylan White, yeah, this is my number one thing in this fight for him. Go to the body. It is. I'm not saying this is how you beat Fury, but I feel like it's something that nobody's ever done to him, and I think I just want to see how he reacts to it, because I just feel like that is your best chance of beating Tyson Fury, because he's too long to hit. So yeah, that would be it. But yeah, this would be how I feel Dylan White could win. I think he's got fairly decent chance in this, but he needs to do, I think, a lot of things right, and that is, I sort of think, going to the body, make it a dirty fight, and just being patient. Don't get too emotional in there. Maybe Tyson Fury's trash talking the fight might affect him. I don't know if he does at all. But yeah, just that is still the sort of things I think Dylan White needs to do in this fight.